He is back. Chris Partridge, one of the better recruiters in all of college football, was with Jim Harbaugh for 5 seasons. He's the guy that maybe landed Dax Hill, Cesar Ruiz, and, of course, Rashawn Gary out of New Jersey. Spent the last 3 years at Ole Miss as their co-defensive coordinator, a couple of those as their primary play caller. But now he's back in Ann Arbor. We're going to break it all down and who is leaving the program since, hell, Jim Harbaugh still has a full coaching staff. We'll tell you all about Chris Partridge returning to Michigan, and we'll tell you more about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Rhone, R-H-O-N-E. Go to rhone.com/chatsports for 20% off your order. I'm wearing Rhone today, and every time I do, I look and feel good. We have got a lot to talk about here on the Michigan Football Report from Chat Sports, all coming up right now. You are watching the Michigan Football Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, James Yoder. As always, welcome into the show. It's been a little while. Jack, we're back. We had kind of an off week last week. We were still doing work, but city of Dallas, ice storm, pretty brutal. I know Midwesterners say, oh, yeah, ice. It's pretty tough to drive in. And so most of the city was shut down for a few days. School off 4 days last week, Jack, can you believe it, in the city of Dallas. So now we're back, though, with news on Chris Partridge. And because we didn't go live last week, folks, on Wednesday, we'll be back this Wednesday, so 2 days from now, a little over 48 hours, about 52 hours or so from now, 5 o'clock Eastern. We'll do our last kind of like live show of the cycle. And I still want to go live this year. May only be off for 2 or 3 weeks as Michigan gets set to start spring practice end of February. So April 1st will be the spring game. So join us live, 5 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. All right, guys, shake up on Michigan's coaching staff. Everybody knows Matt Weiss is out, a little criminal activity. And then Kirk Campbell, the offensive analyst from last year, is in as Michigan's quarterbacks coach. But now Chris Partridge is returning to Michigan staff. And we'll dive in. If you guys are new to Michigan football, you might not even know who Chris Partridge is since he's been away from the program for 3 seasons. But a lot of you guys, of course, do know who he is and what he potentially brings to the table. Now, Partridge hinted at this move a few days ago. He posted on Instagram over the weekend that, hey, he's in Disneyland, right? That's where he tagged the location, posted this photo. Looks like a younger daughter, probably like 6 years old, 5 years old, daughter behind him. Guessing what, 11, 12 years old from there. 2 daughters, and he says roller coaster time, but then he put 4 hearts at the end. And you guys see those hearts down at the bottom of the screen. Those are Michigan football colors, little maize and blue hearts. So maybe he's hinting to that. I think a lot of people were hinting that he could return to Michigan. Had inquiries from a lot of schools in the SEC, Texas A&M being one of them. They've got DJ Dirk in there as their DC. Chris Partridge continue to work under him. But nevertheless, he is back at Michigan. So give me your one-word reaction to the hiring of Chris Partridge returning to Michigan after 3 seasons with Ole Miss and down in the SEC. One reaction down below in the comments. I'm going to go with cool. Pretty good hire, right? Yeah, so cool for me is my one word. But let me know what you guys think. And if you want to add any more commentary or context behind yours, go down in the comments, light them up. Michigan has hired Chris Partridge to return to Jim Harbaugh's coaching staff. Take a look back at Partridge's history. Now, he's got a few jobs other than the ones we're showing on screen, but just really kind of recapping the last 10, 12-ish seasons for him. Was at Paramus Catholic in New Jersey for 5 seasons as their head coach and had history with them prior as an assistant a while before that. Then, Michigan hired him. He was head coach of Jabril Peppers, had some dealings with Rashawn Gary when he was in high school as his coach as well. Director of player personnel. So basically kind of like Michigan's head of recruiting, but also head of just their roster management. I think that could actually come in handy now in the era of transfer portal, of course, name, image, and likeness a little bit. So we'll see how that shakes out. Partridge, director of player personnel, then got an on-field role from 2016-17 special teams coordinator and linebackers coach, then switched over to safeties coach as Michigan had to shake things up. Was hired away by Ole Miss to be their co-DC. So the first year as a true co-DC, last 2 seasons as the actual primary DC, even though it was a co-DC title. He was their play caller in 2021 and 2022, and will return in 2023 as a yet-to-be-determined defensive assistant. Now, special teams with Chris Partridge actually was okay. It was decent, right? It wasn't anything to call home to mom about, but it was decent in the 4 seasons he was in that role. But it turned out a heck of a lot better when he left. Maybe not in 2020, but in 2021 and 2022, among the best special teams groups in all of college football. Not sure if that was due to him leaving or if Jay Harbaugh is that good of a special teams coach. We're going to dive more, though, into Chris Partridge, what he brings to this program. But did want to tell you about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Roan. Folks, we are all busy. Everybody out there are probably like me. You've got social life, you've got parenting responsibilities, and hell, you even like to hit the golf course or the bar, sometimes on company time for a little happy hour. Well, I've got the solution to the hassle of changing clothes between your daily activities, and it is the Commuter Collection from Roan. Athletic dress pants, shirts, and apparel. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Roan stepped up to the challenge. I'm wearing Roan's commuter shirt and commuter pants, both part of the Commuter Collection, which is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man. And here's why. Roan helps you get ready for any occasion with the Commuter Collection, which offers you the most comfortable pants, shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what you wear when you've got the Roan Commuter Collection. It's got also this 4-way stretch protection that I'll show you when I come back on screen in a moment, so you can go from your office to the 18 holes of golf. Folks, it is time to feel confident without the hassle. With Roan's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. And with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And it's 100% machine washable. Folks, look at this stretch. Look at this bad boy. This is a dress shirt. I can wear this to play golf. I can wear it to the bar afterwards. I can wear it to my son's baseball practice afterwards, or toss a sports coat on it. I'm at a business meeting, toss on a tie if it is that kind of day. I've worn this to a holiday party. I've worn this to a wedding. I've worn this to our company holiday party, among other places. I love Roan. The Commuter Collection is the way to do it. If you've got to wear dress clothes, whether it's for work, for personal, for a wedding, etc., you hate getting out there all year and having to pay for dry cleaning. Roan is the way to do it. You got to go to roan.com/chatsports for 20% off your order. Hell of a deal. Roan.com/chatsports. That's RHONE.com/chatsports. Link is down in the comments and the description of today's video. When you get there, use promo code chatsports, no spaces, for 20% off your order. Can Chris Partridge help with maybe some things that Michigan's doing okay, but not phenomenal? Did he learn some things? 3 years working under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I mean, hell, they've called Kiffin the Portal King this year, Ole Miss's social media. So did Chris Partridge, get any of that knowledge of what they're doing down there? And we all know how Ole Miss likes to, spread the wealth around, maybe illegally, legally. We'll see. Did Partridge learn anything from Kiffin, who also worked for Nick Saban, when he was down at Ole Miss? Let's kind of take a look at what I'm calling Michigan's recruiting machine. He was a hell of a recruiter, led player personnel, and was a beast on the recruiting trail. Younger guy, he's got to be in his early 40s now. I'll double check his age. Spent 5 years in Ann Arbor, came over when Rashawn Gary, and really the NCAA kind of changed rules for this because, they made a rule after he came over with Rashawn Gary in 2015 into 16. 42 years old, he said. Producer Jack got it, best producer in the game. 42 years old for Partridge. The NCAA said, hey, if your head coach comes over, you can't recruit that school for a couple of years. NCAA ruled just against Jim Harbaugh and Partridge. From there, he got 4 years as a position coach with Michigan. And look, plenty of schools came after him during that time. He stuck around Michigan for 4 seasons when there were schools like Alabama and other schools in the SEC offering him co-defensive coordinator titles, all this different stuff. But the money was finally right. The situation was right with a new head coach in Lane Kiffin after 2019 in going into 2020 to leave. Kind of spread his wings a little bit, get some defensive coordinator responsibilities, a little more recruiting down the South, and now he returns to Michigan. I'm pretty excited about it, right? I do think that he was a good position coach. I'm not sure if he was great, but that's not really where I think his skills and analysis and everything that he brings to the table is going to be felt for Michigan in the near term. I really think he's going to help out a lot with the transfer portal, and certainly he's going to help out with just high school recruiting in general, as this Michigan football recruiting department is kind of in shambles as another guy left the program last week, the assistant head of recruiting for Michigan. So they've lost Matt Dudek, the guy who went to Washington after him, whose name's escaping me, the assistant recruiting director. But Partridge coming in, he's got responsibility at that role. I don't think that's going to be his primary focus, but he's an on-field coach, likely coach linebackers like we'll talk about here in a second. But I do think he can help Michigan's overall recruiting strategy. All right, more to talk about here with Chris Partridge, what it means for Harbaugh's staff, who's leaving in a second. But I want to ask you guys this question. It is our Monday audience feedback question. How likely are you to recommend this show to a friend who's a Michigan football fan? Of course, 1 through 10. We love 8s, 9s, and 10s. But if you're going to grade us below that, below an 8, let's just say, leave some feedback. How can we improve to get that grade up to an 8, 9, or 10. If you're already in that 8, 9, or 10 range, help us out. Send a link to a friend, youtube.com/Michigan TV. Tell them to join the live show along with you, 5 o'clock Eastern, coming up on Wednesday. So anybody else, though, make sure you go down, recommend the show. Let us know how likely you'd recommend the show, 1 through 10. All right, more on this Chris Partridge discussion with Michigan. So what do we think it's going to be going on with the staff? What do we expect from Partridge as a coach, as a recruiter, as just a trusted agent of Jim Harbaugh, right? Spent 3 years in the SEC. Now, I'm not saying that Ole Miss is a cheating school, but I'm not saying that, right? If you're familiar with Shea Patterson and everything that went on with him there, we know Ole Miss does a little shady stuff. Not with Shea necessarily, but offering players out of things. If you kind of heard anything that came out of his transfer to Ole Miss, I think that it's pretty obvious that Ole Miss has dove into those kind of shadier waters of recruiting for years. But a lot of the stuff they did that may be considered shady is now considered legal with name, image, and likeness. So will Chris Partridge be able to help out Michigan in that instance at all? Certainly Ole Miss has done a decent job, but they're not setting records by any means with the amount of money that they are going to pay their players. And outside of that, can Michigan revitalize their East Coast recruiting? It hasn't suffered by any means drastically, but it hasn't performed at the top level without Partridge. And in general, the couple years that he's been gone from this program have been among Michigan's 2 worst classes. The last 2 following the 2020 season, the last 2 in particular, have not been strong. Guys, one more time, we will be live 5 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. Make sure you're joining the Michigan Football Report. The most talked about, the most watched, the most consumed, and the most engaged audience, most engaged and watched show of any Michigan football program across any platform for the year 2022. We're trying to make it happen again in 2023. Now, think about the staff. Who's out? Michigan's still got 10 coaches on the staff. You've got the offensive side of the ball, which seems pretty set unless someone were to leave for obviously a promotion. You don't want a guy to do a lateral move or anything like that. But the defensive side still has a full slate of coaches as well. Jim Harbaugh has his 10 assistant coaches. I think it's pretty clear that we know who's going to be out. But let's kind of talk about where we've been, right? This is the second assistant coach that Jim Harbaugh has had to replace in this cycle in the month since Michigan's season ended in heartbreak. With TCU beating the Wolverines on December 31st. So I think I've got a pretty good idea who is going to be out. You likely do too. But before we do, given the fact that Chris Partridge did coach linebackers previously at Michigan, so this question on Twitter the other day, want to get your opinion. Who is the better Michigan linebacker? And hell, maybe we can just say the best Michigan linebacker in the Jim Harbaugh era. Devin Bush, Jabril Peppers, both first-team All-Americans. Peppers was a Heisman finalist in 2016 and really only played linebacker truly for like a full season in 2016. Safety prior to that, and really wasn't a huge contributor in his freshman year in 2014 with Brady Hoke. Actually, you think he redshirted. I don't know if he actually played at all. It's a tough one. 2 first-team All-Americans, 2 first-round draft picks in the NFL. I'm going to go with Bush, even though Peppers probably had more accolades than Bush. I'm going to go Bush better as a linebacker. Peppers better overall player because of his impact on offense and, of course, as a punt returner on special teams. It seems to me like George Helow, who's been with Michigan for a couple years, is the odd man out. And I don't have any information on this at all, but it's been whispered around. People have speculated on the internet for days going back to last week. Partridge has been out of the Mississippi program, Ole Miss program, for about 3 weeks now, right? It's very underreported, but he was told to find another role as they went for Pete Golding, the Alabama defensive coordinator. He's coming over to Ole Miss, kind of the same thing. He wasn't going to be allowed to return to Ole Miss, to Alabama. Alabama said, hey, go find another job. Hey, go talk to my guy, what's his name, Ole Miss coach. Lane Kiffin. I'm drawing a blank here. Go talk to Lane Kiffin. He's got a role for you. Okay, come on in, Pete Golding. Well, hey, Chris Partridge, go talk to Jim Harbaugh. He might have a role for you, and here's how we end up. George Helow's been with Michigan for 2 years. Doesn't really have a ton of history with Jim Harbaugh. Got a decade or so in college football coaching. I'm guessing either Harbaugh's pushing him out, telling him to go find something, and we'll find out in the next day or two, or maybe he's reassigning him, saying, George, we haven't seen what we want out of you. We want to bring Chris in. Maybe Helow goes into a recruiting role or some sort of off the field, doesn't count towards your 10, normal recruiters or 10 coaching staff people. Still can provide coaching assistance, but focuses efforts elsewhere. Recruiting, name, image, and likeness, transfer portal, etc. But I do think that Michigan needs stability in their recruiting department. In the last 3 years, they have turned the recruiting department over 2 times, right? A lot of those staffers that were hired 2 years ago, most of them were already even out of the program. They've gone elsewhere. They've been told to reassign. One left for another role with Washington. Wasn't sure if he was working out with Harbaugh. Matt Dudek went on to Mississippi State. He's already been fired there himself. So Albert Karchnia is the guy now from Central Michigan. He's not even 30 years old yet, doesn't have a wealth of experience. But I do think Chris Partridge can help there. Whether or not he has his full hand in recruiting, I think is to be determined. But he is a maniac on the recruiting department, the recruiting trail. He kind of reminds me of the defensive version of Ohio State's wide receivers coach, now offensive coordinator, who he himself has been a maniac on the recruiting trail. That's the kind of vibe I've always got from Chris Partridge. So I think all in, this is going to be a win-win for Michigan no matter what happens to Helow. Whether or not the linebackers get better next year, we'll see. But I do think other areas of the program will definitely get a bump up from the return of Chris Partridge. One more time, though, I want to ask you guys, 1 through 10, how likely are you to recommend this show to a friend, of course, who is a Michigan football fan? If your friends aren't Michigan football fans, probably not going to recommend us that much. So let me know down 1 through 10. If you're below an 8, love to hear some feedback on how we can make the show better to get that recommendation from you. So head on down to the comment section. Don't forget, by the way, 5 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. Join the show. We will be live for about an hour and a half, taking your questions, breaking down all things Michigan football. Until then, go Blue.